It is known that during the Viking Age, the Scandinavian Vikings were the fiercest and most warlike in this region. However, in a church in Denmark, an inscription carved in stone still remains. God protect us from famine, plague, and the evil Curonians. But who are the Curonians, and why were even the Scandinavian Vikings afraid of them? Welcome to the Interesting Documentaries channel, where today I will tell you about the history of the Curonians, the horror of the Vikings. If you want more similar content, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss the latest videos. And now, welcome to the extraordinary times of the fierce Curonians. The Curonians were one of the old Baltic tribes who lived in the territories of present-day Western Lithuania and Western Latvia between the 5th and 16th centuries. They spoke the Curonian language, which was close to Latvian and Lithuanian, but had its own distinct features. The Curonians were known as good fishermen, actively involved in trade and wars. They were brave warriors, sailors, and pirates. Curonian settlements were characterized by distinctive wooden houses with thatched roofs and original carvings and weather vanes. From the earliest mentions, the Curonians were known as the fiercest, most hostile, and most pagan of all the Baltic tribes. The Curonian culture was closely connected to the sea. Thus, they were very strong in seafaring. They were so strong that they mastered the art of shipbuilding and sailing similarly to the Vikings of that time. So it's no wonder that they became known as the Baltic Vikings. The Curonians were involved in alliances, wars, and plundering expeditions against the Icelandic, Danish, and Swedish Vikings. Ironically, at a time when the Vikings were rampaging throughout Western Europe, their own shores were often attacked by the Curonians themselves, sometimes even interrupting their own campaigns to defend their coasts from the ravaging Curonians. About the Curonians, the German chronicler Adam of Bremen wrote in the 11th century, "Of the islands, the largest is the one called Kurland. The journey to it takes 8 days. Those Curonians are the most ferocious tribe. Everyone flees from them because they are excessively devoted to idolatry. There is a lot of gold there and the best horses. All their houses are full of priests, prophets, and sorcerers." In the 13th century Egil's saga, one episode illustrating the cruelty of the Curonians is highlighted. The Scandinavian Viking Egil Skallagrimsson and his companions secretly entered the Curonian settlement and plundered the belongings that could be carried away from its houses. However, as the robbers left the homestead, the Curonians, defenders of their native homes, were already waiting for them. The Curonians attacked them on high ground and some charged, cutting them down with spears and swords through the fences, while others pelted their weapons with rags. Egil and his companions were wounded, then captured, and all were bound and taken to the homestead. The Curonians threw the prisoners into a pit, and Egil was tied to a post. The man who owned the homestead was powerful and wealthy. They discussed what to do with the Scandinavian robbers. The master of the house said that in his opinion it would be best to kill them one by one. However, his son replied that it was already a dark night and there would be no amusement in torturing them. He suggested waiting until morning. This is how one of the many surviving episodes about the mythical cruelty of the Curonians was described. One of the most famous mentions of the Curonians in written sources is around the year 854. The Curonians refused to obey Sweden and pay tribute to it. Then the Danes tried to gain advantage and forced the Curonians to pay tribute to them. A large Danish army entered the Curonian lands, reached one of the most important centres of Kurland, Apula, from the seaside, which is about 50 kilometers away from the sea. But the Danish campaign to Apula was unsuccessful. The united Curonians defeated the Danes. Their previously captured treasures were taken back. After the Danes suffered defeat, the Swedish king Olaf decided to take matters into his own hands. Arriving by ships with a huge army at the Curonian shores, he marched to Apula. Upon reaching it, he besieged Apula with his army. On the 9th day of the siege, negotiations began, and the people of Apula paid a ransom in silver, gave hostages, and recognized Swedish rule. This was the first defeat of such magnitude for the Curonians. However, the Swedes did not dare to stay in the lands of the Curonians. and as soon as they left, the Curonian Vikings again ravaged the Swedish coasts. The tension grew between the Scandinavian Vikings and the Curonians. Most of the Scandinavian attacks against the Curonian lands were a kind of revenge. They sought retribution for the relentless Curonian attacks on their coasts. The Curonians long resisted the Livonian orders of crusaders, although they occasionally made truce agreements. However, even during these truces, Curonian ships constantly attacked Danish merchant vessels. Although the Curonians had made peace with the Bishop of Riga in 1201 and were seemingly not in conflict with the Sword brothers, the latter, while returning to Germany, attempted to attack 8 Curonian Viking ships. Bishop Albert of Riga himself participated in this battle. Attacking, the Sword brothers boarded boats and rowed towards the Curonian ships. The latter arranged their ships in pairs and, having moved their cargo, raised the prows of their ships high into the air. The first 2 German boats that approached became stuck between the joined ships and could do nothing against the Curonians, who were high up on their vessels. From their more adventurous position, the Curonians killed about 30 Germans, after which the remaining attackers retreated to their own ships. The Curonians took the clothes and other possessions of the deceased. Later, the local inhabitants buried the bodies. Following this attack, after the Curonians defeated the Crusaders, the Livonians convinced the Curonians to attack and seize Riga together, where few soldiers remained. The Curonians gathered a large force, arrived at the Daugava Delta by ships, but did not approach the city of Riga. Instead, they set up camp and waited for the signs from their priests regarding the opportune time to attack. The Curonians began their attack on July the 12th. Fishermen warned the townspeople about the approaching attackers. The initial attempts to take the city by storm or set it on fire yielded no results, and the city's shelling was also unsuccessful. After several skirmishes that brought no significant success on either side, the Curonians retreated to their ships, and the people of Riga retreated into the city. The people of Riga set fire to the village outside the city walls. In the afternoon, the Curonians surrounded the city and set fire to the city walls in several places. At the same time, the Curonians suffered heavy losses from the defenders' fire. The Chronicle of Henry of Livonia states that the defenders shot at the attackers as they, holding up their shields, gathered firewood for a bonfire. Towards evening, reinforcements arrived from the upper reaches of the Daugava River. This was the garrison of Holm Castle. After a small clash, the Curonians retreated to the southern bank of the river, where they rested for 3 days, mourned their dead and burned their bodies. At that time, Land Marshal Conrad, who was rushing to the aid of the people of Riga, approached the city. Seeing the growing enemy forces, the Curonians abandoned further fighting and retreated, even though a Tureda Livonian army was on its way to help them. After the battle, the Livonians had urged the Curonians to attack Riga, pay compensation to the bishop for their betrayal, and promise to be loyal in the future. Having never formed a state, the Curonians were forced in 1229 to recognize the authority of the Sword brothers, the Livonian order. After the Samogitian victories in the battles of Saul and Derby, the Curonians revolted in 1260, but their uprising was suppressed by the order. After long battles, part of the Curonian inhabited lands turned into wilderness, and many Curonians retreated from their homeland to Samogita and Lithuania. After the Treaty of Melno in 1422, the southern part of Courland finally fell to Lithuania. The southern Curonians assimilated with the Samogitians, thus later merging into the Lithuanian state through them, while the northern Curonians merged with the Semigalians and Livonians during the same period and became Latvians. The Curonians were mentioned as a separate ethnic unit until the end of the 16th century. Although the Curonian tribe disappeared, their name and history live on in place names, cultural heritage objects, and people's memory. This is the incredible story of the Baltic Vikings, the Curonians. If you want more similar videos, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, thus helping us grow. And now, thank you for watching, and see you in the next interesting documentary video about the unusual history of Lithuania.